Hello, I hope that you have been enjoying those concurrent sessions. It's a quick jump now into our next 3 sessions. We've got a busy day here at TMC. Next up, we have the missing middle, an industry alternative credentialing in the new normal, embracing the digital campus and finding success in student support during COVID, the Student Engagement and Transition Supports Program. Please enjoy.
At least where I'm coming from it is. Thanks for joining us today for this session. I'm coming to you live from the lands of the Boonwurrung, southeast of Melbourne, although our presentation today focuses a bit further south. My name's Mark Hatwell. I'm from Monash University. I'm also on the ATEM board. At least where I'm coming from it is. Thanks for joining us today for this session. I'm coming to you live from the lands of the Boonwurrung, southeast of Melbourne, although our presentation today focuses a bit further south. My name's Mark Hatwell. I'm from Monash University. I'm also on the ATEM board and the steering committee for this very conference. So I'm delighted to introduce this session, and we have 2 presenters, Megan Dwyer, who is Vice Chancellor at Launceston. Just some reminders. And questions for presenters, please direct them through the live Q&A section on your screens. Feel free to use the discussion forum for chatting or observations, but the questions I'll put to the presenters will be from the live Q&A section. And any other questions still outstanding at the end of the session, the presenters can actually send you written responses after the session. So with that done, I'll pass over to Megan and Don for today's session. Thanks.
To you from Lutruwita, Tasmania, Aboriginal land, sea and waterways. I acknowledge with deep respect to traditional owners of this land, the Palawa people, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and future. So, next please. So the Northern Transformation Project will see the University of Tasmania deliver 2 new campuses, one in Burnie and one in Launceston. With deep respect to traditional owners of this land, the Palawa people, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and future. So, next please. So the Northern Transformation Project will see the University of Tasmania deliver 2 new campuses, one online, either synchronously or live. Future. Next, thank you. So the University of Tasmania, unlike many other hub and spoke type universities, is moving towards a regionally networked format. This means that the 3 campuses will be effectively almost independent, but they will respond to effectively the areas in which they are located, responding to the community needs and the type of courses and the type of research that needs to be undertaken. Each regional campus will be built to be economically, socially and environmentally sustainable, and particularly the concept of sustainable numbers of students and staff to make sure that they are economically viable. This places a much greater emphasis on engaging with local community and industry. Next slide, please. Bear with me for a moment. So the Northern Transformation Project was made possible by the Launceston City deal. It's a partnership between the university and all 3 levels of government. And the total project cost is around about 300 to 320 million. And that includes the building at West Park and Burnie. And the 3 themes to the UTAS approach to these campuses has been transformation. It's a lofty aim, but we want to transform the lives of Northern Tasmanians through education. And I'll explain the reason why shortly. Also to do with place. We want all of our campuses to talk to the place in which they are located. And as I mentioned earlier on, that they need to be sustainable in every way, economic, socially and financially. Next slide, please. So the actual buildings themselves, the infrastructure investment is focusing on relocation of the UTAS campuses from suburbia or the burbs to locations closer to the centre of town. And if you look at the image on the right-hand side, the orange dot shows where the current Newnham campus is located, which you can see is in the far suburbs of Launceston, which is not really that far. It's not a huge city, but it's going to move into the city, smack bang into the middle of the city centre where the green dot's located. So the Northern Transformation Project was an opportunity to shape the new campuses at Burnie and Launceston to reflect contemporary needs, as I mentioned earlier. Course offerings are realigned with local industry community needs, but most importantly, less need for students to relocate to another city. This makes universities more accessible, more affordable, and certainly more compatible with other life demands. And for Launceston, the 2 main aims were to bring the university to the city and to revitalise a beautiful piece of industrial heritage that exists right in the CBD. It's a number of projects. It's 3 new buildings, major refurbishment of 2 heritage listed buildings, a new pedestrian cycle bridge, 15,000 square metres of urban realm, and lots more. Next slide, thanks. Just as a lead-in, the campus at West Park in Burnie, referred to as the Cradle Coast campus, was opened last month to great applause. It was also, the architects were JWA, and not a single person has passed a negative comment about the design or the structure of the building. So we're really happy with that one. But I'll be talking all about Launceston today. So place, UTAS' objective was to enhance and enrich place and to co-create buildings with JWA that could not be located anywhere else. You wouldn't be able to see these buildings being placed in any other context. Next slide, please. So the traditional owners of the land on which the Inverest campus is being built are the Tamar River people. And we engaged and consulted deeply with the local Aboriginal community to ensure that we embed Aboriginal knowledges and cultures across our campuses, and more importantly, make them more accessible to their people. One of the questions with our community forums from one of the local Aboriginal representatives was, how are you going to make your university less scary for our people? And so that's been a challenge that we've taken on with Aplomb. Next slide, please. I think I've missed out on, sorry, my apologies, the images of Launceston, thank you. Launceston, we like to call the Paris of the North, is actually built at the confluence of the North and South Esk rivers. It's actually a tidal estuary, population of about 90,000 people, and it was a place of great industry. The Inverest precinct was home to 10,000 workers on the rail yards at the turn of last century. And so what we want to do is bring new life to this beautiful piece of industrial heritage. The last example of it, in fact, in Australia. So the buildings that respond to the language of sheds and factories, and the buildings are so clearly part of the context that these buildings that could not, as I said, be built anywhere else. Next slide, thanks. And next slide. So education, as we all know, is the pillar upon which health and wealth are built. So the North and Northwest Tasmania have some of the lowest socioeconomic indicators in the country. They've got very poor health and education outcomes. Very few people, very low numbers finish year 12, and even fewer go on to higher education, around about 18 to 20% in the north and about 14% in the northwest, and they decline precipitously afterwards. Therefore, the new campuses must be places that engage with the whole family. They need to be places where, even though they are technology enabled, they must be warm, welcoming, porous to the community, and basically help us to achieve our aim to increase educational attainment. And they're going to be navigational markers, if you like. Each of the buildings you can see in and out. There'll be no sort of subtle psychological barriers saying you're not welcome here. These places will be open to everybody. Next slide, please. So the Northern Transformation Project's kind of the buildings that are currently at Inveresk are very high carbon. One of them, called the E.G. Stone building, is made of reinforced concrete. So the Vice Chancellor challenged us to reduce the embodied carbon in our new buildings, JWA and the advisory committees, to reduce it by around about 30 to 35%. And we, and I'll use that royally, have actually done that. So JWA and consultants examined the origins, the utilisation, the assembly, the eventual dismantling and potential reuse of materials to evaluate total carbon utilisation. And our colleague Sam Clegg speaks to a low embodied carbon in an on-demand presentation at this conference. So a lot of the buildings are made out of recycled pipelines and so on, but just as they can be assembled from a kit of parts, they can be disassembled. And at the end of their life, which hopefully will be well over 100 years, they will actually be able to be put back together again. And I'll ignore the next slide and lead on. I'll hand over to you, Megan.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dom. Well, the circumstances of this project required that we work very much from first principles. We came to the table without any preconceptions about what these buildings might be like, and instead we engaged with the university very closely to map our way forward together. The universities saw this, as Dom has mentioned, as an opportunity to engage deeply with the community, in a way to win their hearts and minds and to involve them in the creation of these buildings. So our work began with a co-design process in 2019. This was, of course, before the pandemic, and so we were able to undertake this process face-to-face. This broad engagement with stakeholders has continued across all stages of the project. Dom and his colleagues have spent over 200 hours communicating with over 2,000 people. And in fact, this engagement continues today with staff having the opportunity to comment on prototypes and material samples for workplace settings. So this has brought a physical dimension to the engagement, and as the project is now becoming very tangible. Then, of course, the pandemic hit in 2020, and we found ourselves working through the design stages while borders were closed and many of us were in lockdown. Needless to say, there was a heavy reliance on digital platforms, and in fact, this image shows a compilation of our Miro whiteboard where we collated our design thinking and shared it with the university. There was certainly an advantage to working online in that we could easily convene meetings independently of where people were located, whether that was Hobart, Launceston, Burnie, or indeed Melbourne. And in fact, UTAS were entirely used to working this way. They've been doing that for some time, given their dispersal across the state. So what can we say about these buildings? Well, these buildings are intimate in scale and, importantly, in character. These buildings offer shared environments. They're each a system of spaces that are not owned by one college or discipline, but shared by the campus community. They support a pedagogy that is firmly focused on blended learning, that is the delivery of content online with deep face-to-face learning experiences. And so there is an emphasis on informal, collaborative and specialised learning spaces in these buildings. These buildings reflect the needs of students and the reasons that they come to campus, whether that is to access technology. Not everyone has a device nor a decent internet connection to connect with their peers and teachers, but also to engage in these deep face-to-face learning experiences. So, as Dom mentioned, we'll talk to you today about the Inveresk campus and take you on a short tour of what we're doing there. So, first of all, important to say this is not a campus with well-defined edges. It's a campus that's integrated into the fabric of the city, into the day-to-day experience of community is foremost in their minds. Inveresk sits at a bend in the North Esk River, not far from the Launceston CBD. So in fact, the CBD is located just off the bottom right-hand corner of this slide. As Dom mentioned, this site was where the rail line that ran between Hobart and Launceston terminated, and many of the railway sheds are still here, and they make up that dense cluster of grey buildings that you can see toward the centre of the slide. And to the left is York Park, also known as University of Tasmania Stadium. This is the home of the AFL in Tasmania. And important to note too, the Queen Victoria Museum and the Launceston Tramway Museum are also located in this precinct. So it's a precinct that's very layered and rich in different uses over time. Important to note that the university has had a presence at this site for some time, and those buildings are highlighted there in the green, and you may be familiar with the School of Architecture, which was refurbished by 6 Degrees some time ago. So the university are making a further substantial investment to refurbish those existing buildings, but also to establish a substantial new student accommodation in a series of smaller, again, more intimate buildings. And so the project that we worked on is much wider than, the project is much wider than the 3 buildings that we worked on. But here we have them, the River's Edge building, the library and the Willis Street building, and these buildings are very much embedded into the existing fabric. And in fact, you can see that the university buildings begin to cluster together between York Park and the railway buildings around a green triangle of space, despite being a triangle, has become known as University Square. Each of the new buildings pays homage to the industrial past of the precinct. At the top of this slide, we show the earliest railway shed. At the centre, the E.J. Stone building, which is occupied by the university, and a slightly later building. And then at the bottom of the page, the 3 new buildings. And you can sort of see there that there's an evolution of form over time. So each of the new buildings is a shed-like structure that has been twisted and pulled in response to the exact circumstances of their site. These buildings are very much of their place. They're modest buildings. They have humility. There are characteristics that are consistent across each of them, as you will see. So the first, the library. This is, of course, designed around the concept that a library is a place for people. We've seen many university libraries transition away from being a repository for large collections to become more people-friendly. And so we were able to design with that in mind from scratch. So the building measures nearly 3,500 square metres and spans across 3 levels. So it has quite a petite footprint and is quite a small building. It faces towards University Square and connects with the network of pedestrian pathways that extend across the site. Here you can see the form of the building, including the new sawtooth. The image on the right shows the entry. So right at the entry, or right at the front door, there is shelter, there's a place to sit, and the activities within are revealed. So this is a building that invites people in and encourages them to stay a while. The ground floor offers a wide range of study settings, some informal, others structured. The large open space provides desktop computers, as not all students have their own devices nor reliable internet services. There is a through path that extends from the front entry to a second entry that provides connectivity to the E.J. Stone building. As you can see here in this image of the ground floor, it is very open and broad with lots of natural daylight. There's strong visual connection to the outside, and the palette of materials is warm with soft natural hues. So it's a very comfortable, easy space to be in. The library collection is located at levels 2 and 3, and here you can see the low height shelves sit well below the raked ceilings, and we have reading areas dispersed amongst the shelving. Again, there's plenty of natural daylight. While the lower levels are concrete structure, a concrete structure lined with permanent cross-laminated timber formwork, level 3 is a timber structure of glulam columns, beams and trusses. So the base building is largely complete and the interior fit out is well underway. We have about 12 weeks to go in the program, so this building will be ready for the 2022 academic year. The other buildings are in construction but follow this one, so they're not quite as far advanced. So the second building is the River's Edge building. This building is primarily a learning and teaching building. It measures nearly 7,000 square metres and is arranged across 4 levels. It accommodates an entire ecosystem of learning spaces, albeit without a single lecture theatre or a traditional classroom. This building also accommodates the Riawana Centre, a series of spaces designed for the Indigenous community. They open out onto the river. So the first image shows the River's Edge building from University Square. You can see the library on the right-hand side and the E.J. Stone building behind it. The back of this building, hence the River's Edge, being known as the River's Edge building, and the glazed, expansive glazed facade allows views out to the pedestrian pathways that run along the banks of the river and up and down the river. Quite a dramatic outlook. This building is triangular in plan, and as with the library, it's possible to walk through the building from one side to the other, so it's very permeable and offers a number, responds to a number of approaches. An atrium space sits at the centre of the plan. This atrium space is top lit, and again, this is an intimate interior with good visual connectivity from the ground level to the upper levels. Again, the materials palette is soft and with natural materials, so you do begin to see this consistency of approach across the suite of 3 buildings. There's a range of informal study spaces in and around the atrium. Some are intimate and enclosed, others have advantage over the central space. The particular setting in this image supports engagement between students and their teachers. The formal teaching spaces in this building are collaborative classrooms, and the largest of these is this one, a space designed for a cohort of 40, quite a bit smaller perhaps than we're used to at larger campuses. Again, there is strong visual connectivity into the central open space, but also out to the landscape beyond. The Willis Street building is a building for the sciences and health sciences. It's the third in the suite of 3. And this building is like a Swiss Army pocket knife. It's a building of specialised learning spaces in support of the wide range of disciplines that will be taught at this campus. It's a relatively large building at nearly 10,000 square metres, and you'll notice that it's located on the city side of the river. From University Square, you can make your way past the museum and the student housing, cross the bridge and walk along the zigzag pathway as you approach the front door. From here you could continue through City Park back toward the city. And from this direction, this building plays a very important introductory role for the campus. The bridge is complete. In fact, this was the first element to be completed. It connects into a system of existing pedestrian pathways that trace around the river's edge at the top of the levee. It offers a scenic experience, sometimes quite spectacular, and it really does serve to reconnect you with place. You're reminded that you're in a river setting as you walk from one side of the bridge to the other. The views of this building unfold upon approach, whether it's from the CBD or from the bridge. The shed-like character is very evident from every direction. And in fact, you can see the bridge in the right-hand image. It lands very close to the front door of this building. As with the other buildings, it is designed to be very welcoming. Again, it provides shelter and a place to sit right at the front door. And again, the activities within are revealed. The form of the building could be described as two linear sheds that are slipped apart to create an atrium space at the centre. Again, there are informal spaces at the heart of the building. It is a very hard-working building, this one, as you can see from the plan. The atrium has a number of characteristics shared with the previous building. There's strong visual connectivity between the levels, and it's beautifully naturally lit with daylight falling through the timber framed and glazed roof. This building will serve a wide range of disciplines from chemistry, food chemistry, geography and spatial sciences, biology, sports science and dietetics, and nursing. It also offers a wide range of specialised teaching and research spaces in a single building. The north wing accommodates dry teaching laboratories and workspace, while the south wing accommodates wet research and teaching laboratories designed to meet PC2 requirements. The ground floor accommodates the health clinics and nursing simulation suites, and I thought it was worth just spending a little bit of time on these. These areas will be frequented by the community, and so they've been located where they're readily accessible and prominent and visible from the atrium. The nursing simulation suite provides high and medium fidelity simulated hospital ward environments. There are 2 6-bed laboratories and 1 8-bed laboratory, each of which can be broken down into 2 bedrooms to reflect current best practice in industry. Other simulated environments include a setting for hospital in the home care and a birthing suite with bath facilities for warm water immersion. The necessary support and store spaces, nurses' station and waiting space is also provided to recreate the hospital setting. So what are some of the learnings from this project? Well, first of all, we know now that it's possible to design and deliver new buildings during a pandemic, and I would say that we've enjoyed a very productive and positive engagement with the university over that period of time. There are great benefits to deep consultation with all stakeholders. I think Dom would say that there has been that community acceptance has provided great social license. The delivery of online content does not threaten the existence of the campus. We're very pleased to hear. We're firm believers in the face-to-face, the benefit of face-to-face learning. And these buildings are also proving to be the reason that students are returning to campus, which is particularly interesting to us and something that we'll certainly be looking at more closely next year. So in summary, we think that the new campuses at Burnie and Launceston offer some clues for the way that campuses might be reshaped in a post-COVID world, but also perhaps for the development of satellite campuses in regional areas. We'd be very happy to take any questions that you might have around these suggestions or perhaps any of the content in the presentation.
Okay, yeah, we've got questions. One's come through from Sarah. Fantastic location and transformation for Launceston and the university. What have been the top or key challenges or issues with academic stakeholders or users during design and ongoing operational changes?
I can try and answer that one. Parking and offices. As always, we are moving away from what I refer to as cell block H in Long Kesh type of corridors of offices to a mix of individual occupancy, dual occupancy, and then flexible workplaces. We're not talking about offices as such, and that's been a challenge for a lot of staff. Also, the fact that we're not building lecture theatres. COVID has done us a favour. We've moved all of our content online. What we want to do is have deep engagement. So bringing the academics along on that journey is going to be, let's just say, it's a journey on its way.
Yep, right. Another one, and this one occurred to me too, actually. One from Jeffrey here. Do you think the way in which you worked during the pandemic will continue post-pandemic, i.e. less travel to sites during design? And my question on that is, though Tasmania hasn't had, obviously, the lockdowns of some of the mainland states, is there an interest in staff working from home, and how might that have impacted on the design of capacity and hybrid sort of working spaces?
We've got we did a survey pre-post and about 6 months after our lockdown, and 85% of staff still wanted to retain the ability to work from home. So we've actually we provided workspace for only 85% because we're making the assumption that staff will stay off site. Just a comment there from Jeffrey, are these all electric buildings powered by renewables? Tasmania is actually 100% renewable power. So we've basically opted for, we can, if we want, include photovoltaic cells, but really why not? Why would we? Because we're actually 100% renewable, and Tasmania will be 200% renewable in around about 20 years. So we'll be an exporter of green hydrogen and the like.
Such a great story, that one, Dom, of renewable energy in Tasmania, and it made us shift our focus to the embodied carbon in the materials of the building, perhaps more so than necessarily than the amount of energy that the buildings might have been consuming.
Matt's asked a question about the students staying locally. It is very much a challenge. We've got 3 challenges to higher education for regional Tasmania, and that is the cost, in other words, the cost of actually paying for education, the cost of travelling to education, and the actual sort of ivory tower that we've got. So the idea of having learning in place, it's very, very counterintuitive. In fact, it's going against what most mainland universities are doing. We've put nursing in the Northwest Coast, for example. You know, that type of idea of like putting the courses that people want to study where they are needed.
Yep. There's another one here from Steve Hayward. Glass atriums can prove to be challenging for maintenance. What considerations were included during design to facilitate future maintenance work?
Very good question, and I must say, we do have the same consideration for sort of, in a way, any tall space in a building that might require a particular access. But in this case, we gave very careful consideration to the services that were located within the atrium, and we worked very carefully to make those accessible for maintenance, and like all roofs, the glass roof needs to be accessible for maintenance, and so there is a system that will be installed to allow that.
I actually deleted something there, but it said, did we consult with students? Yeah, we consulted with the entire student cohort, and probably around about 2,000 individuals, both within the university and without. And as Megan said, about 200 hours of technical working groups. We also had a disability working group, a community design code group, as well as an Aboriginal reference group. And I can't remember how many other groups we consulted with.
Right. And we might just take that one more there from Jeffrey. What measures were taken to make the buildings well insulated and airtight to provide comfort and low energy bills?
We certainly did pay attention to that. It's not to perhaps passive house standards, but nonetheless we did give that some very careful thought in our design process.
Great, thank you. Well, any more questions, please feel free to contact the presenters directly, but we're out of time. We've got 5 minutes until the next keynote session. So I'd like, on behalf of everyone who attended, some 130 or more, to thank Megan and Dom for that presentation today. Great to hear everyone's going well in so for everyone who wanting to join the keynote presentation now by PVC from QUT, Angela Leach, just go to your event program to join the next session. Please remember to complete the survey on exiting the session. And thanks again, everyone, for your attention.